First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer. How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi, host of Tier Talk. Woke up to some bad news today. NYPD lost its 10th officer this year to suicide. Sad. And when I read that, I think about our profession. Because we're in law enforcement, and we deal with the same stressors. And I was just curious to see if we're dealing with it in the right manner. I have some advice I'd like to give when we come back from our sponsors. But guys, this is no joke. This is serious. You know, I know that police get a lot of attention on them, but corrections may have a higher rate of suicide, percentage-wise. And for me, I know it's real because I've worked with people who are no longer with us because they took that route. So I think now, with all the attention on that first responder suicide, that law enforcement suicide, especially a lot of attention going to NYPD, I thought I could maybe put some light onto us. Talk about our profession and the struggles that we face. So we come back from our sponsors, that's what I'm going to do. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk, so if you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell is going to notify you every time I post a video. Stand by for our sponsor. When we come back, we're going to discuss law enforcement suicide. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Thank you guys for listening to our sponsor. You know, this is always a tough topic to cover because I don't know how suicide has affected you personally, whether you know someone who took their lives or whether maybe you were close to making that choice. But either way, it's not a topic that we welcome, but it's definitely a topic that's relevant. It's a topic that needs to be discussed because it's real. Correctional officers have one of the highest rates of suicide, percentage-wise. So it's real. It's right in front of you. So we can't avoid it, which means we have to face it. You know, I recently went to resiliency training, and it was great because there were a bunch of law enforcement professionals around, and we were sitting amongst them as equals. And we were respected. They were talking about the stressors in our profession, and they were comparing it to the same stressors as being a police officer or FBI agent. You know, basically normalizing the abnormal. Seeing the things that we see and having the resiliency to move forward. Again, when I say resiliency, it's not ignoring things and moving forward. It's battling through it. It's allowing yourself to feel whatever the emotion is and addressing it at that time and not bottling it up to the point where it's unrecognizable and then you snap. I'm snapping, but I don't know what's really causing it. So therefore, I can't address the issue. It also talked about having a resource. Remembering that you're not alone and finding a connection with somebody who can remind you of what you're worth, the value. And if you take your life, the people that are going to be affected by that loss of life. Because most of the time, when people make that decision, it is rather impulsive. And it may only take one person just to interact with them briefly to remind them, hey, whoa, before you do that, let me just tell you why you shouldn't. So reminding people that they need a resource is very important. For me, I go to my family, I tell my family things. I let them know what I can about this profession and how it affects me sometimes. Again, because they know me. They know me outside of this profession. So they pretty much know what I can handle and what I can't handle. And it's great that I tell them these things because if I do have issues, I try to address it immediately, because if I don't, well then I'm going to go through these subtle changes and now my family's not going to know who I am anymore. So they're really not going to know how to help me because I'm a stranger to them now. And again, I don't even know what the problem is anymore because I just pile things on top of things on top of things. So it's good to have that resource. You know, we work in a profession, law enforcement in general, corrections, yes, where we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And I disagree with that. And I'm sure most of us watching this video will disagree with that. I think admitting that something's bothering you takes more courage than anything else, especially in this profession. And to know that you have a concern that must be addressed. You know, as management, I want my staff to be mentally healthy. I want them to have a good mindset. So if they have concerns, I would hope that they would let us know so we could have it addressed. I know people have that trust factor, but you want to have a healthy staff. So therefore, you have to give them a way to have resources, and if they have issues, that we have a way that we can address them. So we should be in an environment where we promote that, where we encourage that. That's part of the resiliency. You have a concern, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to help you address that concern, because it is very important to have that concern addressed. You know, when it comes to suicide, when it comes to someone taking that final act, there's the aftermath as well that I don't want people to ignore. And there are people that are going to be affected by that loss, which I definitely saw clearly in the resiliency training, that are always going to be left asking why, not truly understanding why that person made that choice. And they're going to kind of go back and look at things, what we call a hindsight bias. Basically, they have information now that they're using to kind of look over their past, to kind of make judgment over their last interactions with that individual. And it's actually an unfair judgment, because you have context now that you're using that you didn't have before. And then you get levels of guilt. Like, maybe the person was reaching out to me. Well, you're only saying that now because you know the person took their lives. But you weren't thinking that before because it wasn't evident to you. So for people that are trying to understand that why, sometimes you gotta be happy that maybe your interaction prolonged their life just a bit longer. Because I know for a fact if someone wants to kill themselves, they're going to find means and ways to do it. And our interaction, sometimes that slows the process down, but eventually something's going to happen, you're not going to be around, and they're going to act impulsively, and they're going to do it. I would hope that people have the courage that when they need help, they cry for it, they reach out to somebody. But again, if somebody's really determined, they're going to act on that moment, and they may not reach out for anybody. So again, a reminder here is that, hey guys, don't make this a choice for you. You always have someone to reach out to. So if you're going through those motions where you feel that you want to take your own life, please reach out to somebody. Talk to them. The key here is that you don't want that impulsive decision to not just affect you, but to affect the people that love you, because they'll have to live with that for the rest of their lives. And some of us feel responsible. So if you have kids, they may feel responsible. If you have a spouse, she may feel responsible. And it's sad to say, but it's true. So again, guys, tough topic to cover. The key here is how we process information, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, have that resource that knows you for you, that knows you outside this profession. Now, remember how I mentioned that the profession that we're in really doesn't allow that sense of vulnerability, or that we don't think allows it, but technically we should have that vulnerability because we need that to be healthy. Imagine also being a supervisor in this profession. They may have it harder because now they have troops that are under them. And they may feel, hey, well, I lead these people. I can't be vulnerable in front of them. I'm hoping that a frontline staff would support a supervisor that may have an issue with something or a concern, and maybe they didn't want to address it because they felt that they're vulnerable, their troops won't see them as being effective. I'm hoping that we don't promote an environment like that. I hope you know that they may be our supervisor, but they're human too. And sometimes they need to debrief as well. You know, sometimes we play the role, but that role still gets to us. So hopefully we don't forget the supervisors in this as well, who also could be affected. Maybe they're smiling or kind of going through the motions, but in the end, they're just piling things on top of things on top of things. But I'm very curious about your input. It's a very tough dialogue to have, but definitely a needed discussion, especially during these times. But I'm curious to see if you guys have any advice, or if you're willing to share a story. You know, a story shared can save a life. So maybe if you're willing to be vulnerable just a little bit, to share a little bit of a story, we would greatly appreciate on this channel. Also, if you're in a position to have resource officers or resource staff, you need to have them in play. Whether they're CISM teams that come to react but also to prevent, or if we have a team put in play that our staff can go to in case they're feeling something and we want to prevent. But we need to start working on that immediately. Again, NYPD had 10 suicides in 1 year, and now they have to react. But we should be at a level where we should be looking to prevent. So what measures do you have in your facility to also prevent? So again, the ripple effect. If someone takes their own lives, it could start a ripple effect. How do we prevent someone else from doing the same? Very curious. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.